Tonight, paying tribute to Colin Powell, a soldier and a statesman who broke barriers. And tonight, what we've now learned about his recent battle with COVID and what put him at risk. Remembered as a trailblazer, a life dedicated to public service. He served as Secretary of State and as Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the first black man to hold either post. Tonight, Colin Powell dying of complications from COVID and his other health battles. Colin Powell, in his own words, on a life lived, and on his most controversial moment, making the case for the Second Iraq War and weapons of mass destruction. What he told our Barbara Walters long after. And tonight, Martha Raddatz here on the tributes pouring in. Also tonight, the FBI now on the ground in Haiti, where 16 Americans and 1 Canadian, 5 of them children, have been kidnapped. What we're now learning, Marcus Moore on the ground in Haiti. The battle over mandates tonight, parents pushing back, and this evening what they say when asked if they got their children other vaccinations when they were young, why not for COVID? And news tonight on the virus, where they're now seeing a Delta subvariant, why some authorities say it requires urgent research. Overseas tonight, China now denying it has tested a new hypersonic missile, reportedly flying 5 times the speed of sound. How would you track it if it was carrying a nuclear weapon? And was U.S. intelligence caught off guard? Jury selection underway tonight in the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. 3 white men, including a father and son, accused of killing Arbery, and now the key video that will be at the center of this trial. The ABC News exclusive, the former British spy behind the infamous Steele dossier, investigating possible links between then-candidate Donald Trump and Russia. Tonight, speaking for the first time, what he now says about the most damning claims in his report, including the suggestion there was a compromising videotape. George Stephanopoulos one-on-one with Christopher Steele. And anyone who loves Tony Bennett will love the reason he's in the news tonight.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening. It is great to start another week with all of you at home, and we begin tonight with Colin Powell, a soldier, a diplomat, an advisor to presidents, Republican and Democrat, a life dedicated to service, a life of breaking barriers. We learned today not only of his death, but of his private battle with COVID. He was fully vaccinated, but now we've learned of his other private health battles that put him at increased risk. And tonight here, the tributes now pouring in. President Biden ordering flags to half-staff, calling Powell a, quote, patriot of unmatched honor and dignity. He grew up in the Bronx, the son of immigrants. He found his calling in the U.S. military. Tonight, what he said, how it felt when he first put on that uniform. 2 tours in Vietnam, rising to 4-star general, and then the nation's top military leader, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He then served as Secretary of State, the first black man to serve in both of those roles. It was as Secretary of State he made the case for the second U.S. invasion of Iraq, the weapons of mass destruction that later the world would learn did not exist. What he told Barbara Walters about that moment. Colin Powell worked for 4 presidents. He put country ahead of party. And tonight he is being remembered and honored by presidents, diplomats, and by the men and women in uniform. Martha Raddatz, who covered General Powell for years, leading us off.
Tonight, the nation remembering General Colin Powell, a trailblazing leader, a diplomat, a soldier, a patriot who served as the first black Secretary of State, first black chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and first black national security advisor. This to Ronald Reagan. Today, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, the country's first black Pentagon chief, who looked to Powell as a mentor and friend, saying Powell's death leaves a hole in his heart.
The world lost one of the greatest leaders that we have ever witnessed.
President Biden ordering flags to be flown at half-staff, saying Colin embodied the highest ideals of both warrior and diplomat, adding he put country before self, before party, before all else, in uniform and out.
He's not only a dear friend and a patriot, one of our great military leaders and a man of overwhelming decency.
Howell died of complications from COVID-19 at Walter Reed Medical Center. He was 84. A spokeswoman revealing Powell had been battling a rare blood cancer called multiple myeloma and Parkinson's, too. Doctors say the blood cancer can weaken the immune system, making him more vulnerable, even though he was fully vaccinated. He had been scheduled for the booster right when he came down with COVID. Powell's journey was an American journey. Born to Jamaican immigrants in Harlem, Powell grew up in the Bronx, joining the Army ROTC in college, serving 2 combat tours in Vietnam. Powell once said when he first put on a uniform, he liked what he saw. Powell would soon break through barriers, becoming a 4-star general, serving under 4 presidents, Republican and Democrat. In 1991, overseeing the successful Gulf War when the U.S. ousted Iraqi President Saddam Hussein from Kuwait. His most controversial moment coming more than 20 years later. In 2003, as Secretary of State, during a speech to the UN, Powell made the case for war, telling the world of Iraq's weapons of mass destruction.
The gravity of this moment is matched by the gravity of the threat that Iraq's weapons of mass destruction pose to the world.
Those weapons did not exist. The intelligence was flawed. Telling ABC's Barbara Walters he felt terrible about the claims made in that speech.
Do you think this blot on your record will stay with you for the rest of your life?
Well, it's of course it will. It's a blot. I'm the one who presented it on behalf of the United Nations, United States, to the world, and it will always be part of my record.
How painful is that?
It was painful. It's painful now.
Tonight, former President George W. Bush calling Powell a great public servant. Bill and Hillary Clinton saying he was a courageous soldier, a skilled commander, a dedicated diplomat, and a good and decent man. President Obama saying he embodied what America can and should be. General Powell, in his own words, on a life lived.
My life's been blessed because I've had a chance to serve my country, and I've had a chance to do things that benefited my country. And when it's all over, I just hope they say, you know, he's a good soldier, he did a good job, raised a good family, and God bless him. That's all I ask for.
Powerful words from General Powell tonight. Martha with us from Washington. And Martha, we know many Republicans wanted Powell to run for president along the way. He famously resisted, and it was often reported that his wife, Alma, was not keen on the idea.
She was not, David, and I think she was largely concerned about his safety. And in the end, he really didn't want to run for president, because whenever you asked Colin Powell whether he wanted to be called secretary or general, he would always say general, because he was a soldier at heart, a good soldier. David?
I know that was something you asked him along the way, Martha. Thank you. We're going to turn now to the other news this Monday night. The FBI and a team of U.S. officials now on the ground in Haiti tonight, joining the urgent search after 16 Americans and a Canadian have been kidnapped, 5 of them children. ABC's Marcus Moore in Port-au-Prince tonight.
Tonight, the FBI, now part of the urgent, coordinated effort to rescue 17 members of a Christian organization kidnapped in Haiti, including more than a dozen Americans. A team of U.S. officials on the ground working with senior Haitian authorities to secure their safe release after a gang kidnapped the missionaries on Saturday. Ohio-based Christian Aid Ministries confirming the 17 kidnapped members include 16 Americans, 1 Canadian, and 5 children. The group had just visited this orphanage near Port-au-Prince when Haitian authorities say they were stopped at a checkpoint by one of the country's most notorious gangs, 400 Mawoso.
That's their modus operandi. They tend to attack convoys, buses, and taxis. And so this fits with their pattern of operation.
In a newly released statement, the Ohio-based organization tonight asking the public to, quote, join us in prayer that God's grace would sustain the men, women, and children who are being held hostage.
By some estimates, those violent gangs now control nearly half of the capital city of Port-au-Prince, terrorizing locals with violent gun battles and those brazen kidnappings.
The surge in gang violence further crippling the impoverished nation after the July assassination of its president, Jovenel Moïse. And an earthquake in August that killed more than 2,200 people and left tens of thousands homeless.
David, officials confirmed to ABC News that the FBI has made contact with the 400 Mawoso gang, but the exact nature of their communication is unclear tonight. And David, as you know, this is still a very delicate situation.
Marcus Moore in Haiti for us. Thank you, Marcus. We're going to turn now to the COVID pandemic and the battle over vaccine mandates. California parents tonight opposed to vaccine mandates for school children, saying they will take their kids out of school before getting them the vaccine when it comes to that. And that face-off in Chicago, police officers defying the mayor's demand that they be vaccinated. Amid that number, that more than 60% of officers lost last year on the front lines were lost to COVID. And tonight, the call to action after another subvariant has been detected in the UK, and reports it's been detected in parts of the U.S. too. Our chief national correspondent, Matt Gutman, from California now.
Across California today, in those boisterous protests, thousands opposing the state's vaccine mandate for students. Some parents preparing to homeschool their kids.
I will never vaccinate my kids.
Okay.
I will never vaccinate.
So you would pull them out?
I will pull them out. I will quit my job. I will teach them at home if I have to.
California teachers are now required to get the shot, and all students will follow as soon as the vaccine is fully approved for their age group. The COVID vaccine joining a list of 10 other vaccines required for school, like measles and mumps. But Lindsay McCoy, who started homeschooling her kids last year, says this vaccine is different.
Do you do the MMR vaccines and the polio and all that stuff as well?
I am totally pro-vaccine.
In general?
In general, absolutely. And I think that it's my choice with my doctor. We should have a conversation and decide what is necessary for our children.
And tonight, across the country, some police officers are also pushing back against vaccine mandates. In Chicago, 35% of the police department's officers haven't reported their vaccination status and risk losing their jobs.
I really hope that the men and women of the Chicago Police Department, who have been fed a lot of stuff, that's the most polite and appropriate word I can use in this forum, are not going to ruin their careers over going to a website and saying yes or no.
Last year, nationwide, 62% of all officer deaths in the line of duty were from COVID.
So let's bring in Matt Gutman tonight. And Matt, I wanted to get to this other headline as well we're following today. We know scientists are now tracking what they're calling a Delta subvariant, a related strain in the UK where cases are rising. There are reports tonight it's been found in the U.S. too. What do we know so far?
David, this is one of those so-called Delta Plus variants. It has been detected in the UK. In fact, it's about 6% of all the cases in the UK. You mentioned it is here in the U.S., and it's of such concern that one of the former heads of the FDA, Scott Gottlieb, wrote today, we need urgent research to figure out if this Delta Plus is more transmissible. David?
All right, Matt Gutman tonight. Thank you, Matt. We turn next here this evening to China, that country denying reports tonight that they have tested a nuclear-capable hypersonic missile. How would you track it if it was carrying a nuclear weapon and was U.S. intelligence caught off guard? Here's our foreign correspondent, James Longman now.
Tonight, China denying reports it test-fired a hypersonic missile, technology that would allow it to fire a nuclear warhead faster than anyone else. Britain's Financial Times saying Beijing test-launched the weapon this summer, sending it into space and around the planet before it landed just 25 miles away from its intended target. Hypersonic glide weapons can fly 5 times the speed of sound and lower than conventional weapons.
The U.S. does not currently have the ability to even track this weapon, much less defeat it. It will give the Chinese the ability to conduct a nuclear strike anywhere in the world without warning.
The U.S. and Russia are also developing this capability, but it's thought they're far behind China in this particular weapons race. The report, which can't be independently verified by ABC News, says that U.S. intelligence services had no idea that China was so far ahead. China denies it was a hypersonic missile, calling it instead a routine test of a reusable spacecraft. But this will only add to U.S. concerns about China's nuclear buildup. David?
All right, James, thank you. James Longman tonight. Back here at home now, jury selection is now underway in the murder trial of 3 men accused in the death of Ahmaud Arbery. And tonight, the video that will now play a central role. ABC's Elwin Lopez from Georgia.
Tonight, jury selection is underway in the trial of 3 men charged in the killing of Ahmaud Arbery. Of the 1,000 potential jurors summoned, 600 have been asked to report today. So far, none have been seated. At the center of the trial will be this disturbing video, which emerged 2.5 months after Arbery's death in February of last year. Filmed by William Rhodey Bryan, it appears to show father and son, Gregory and Travis McMichael, in a pickup truck chasing Arbery, who was unarmed and out for a jog near Brunswick, Georgia. Then Travis fatally shooting the 25-year-old in what prosecutors say was a racially motivated crime. The defense maintaining that the McMichaels saw Arbery leaving a house under construction and thought he was a burglar and were using a then existing law to make a citizen's arrest. They say Travis shot in self-defense.
Your Honor, first, for the record, we don't believe this is a case about race.
Tonight, Arbery's parents told me they believe justice will be served.
And do you think that you'll be able to see a fair jury?
I'm praying to God.
I think we will get justice for Ahmaud.
And David, the three men pleaded not guilty to those charges, and it could take 2 weeks before all 12 jurors and 4 alternates are seated. David?
Elwin Lopez covering this trial for us. Thank you. We turn now to the ABC News exclusive tonight. The former British spy behind the infamous Steele dossier, investigating possible links between then-candidate Donald Trump and Russia. Tonight, speaking for the first time. What he now says about the most damning claims in his report. George Stephanopoulos, one-on-one with Christopher Steele. Here's John Carl.
Christopher Steele, the former British spy who set off a political firestorm in the United States about Donald Trump's alleged ties to Russia, is now speaking out in public for the first time in an exclusive interview with George Stephanopoulos.
Give me a declarative sentence. Christopher Steele is
a patriot, somebody who has professional integrity and expertise, and somebody who is a true friend and ally of the United States.
Steele authored the infamous Steele dossier. It presented some allegations about Russian interference which proved to be accurate, but others, including a salacious claim that the Russians may have had a video of Trump watching prostitutes in a Moscow hotel room, are either unproven or discredited. An investigation by the Justice Department's Inspector General showed that the source who gave Steele some of his key material, a Washington analyst, told the FBI much of it was rumor and speculation, including the supposed videotape recorded by Russia to blackmail Trump, what's known in Russia as compromat.
One of your main collectors spoke to the Inspector General, said that especially the compromat was word of mouth and hearsay, conversations with friends over beers. It was just talk.
If you have a confidential source and that confidential source is blown or is uncovered, that confidential source will often take fright and try and downplay and underestimate what they've said and done. And I think that's probably what happened here.
Steele says he believes the video probably exists, but Trump and his allies say it was all designed to destroy his presidency before it even started.
It's phony stuff. It didn't happen.
But tonight, Christopher Steele defends his work.
So you stand by the dossier?
I stand by the work we did, the sources that we had, and the professionalism which we applied to it.
Regarding that salacious video, although Steele says he believes it probably does exist, he also says he, quote, wouldn't put 100% certainty onto it. Regarding the overall dossier, David, he said, we knew some of it was right, but he adds we suspected some of it may never be provable. David?
John Carl live in Washington. John, thank you. And there is much more of George's exclusive interview with Christopher Steele in Out of the Shadows, an original ABC News documentary available right now on Hulu. When we come back here tonight, news this evening about a horrific attack on a woman on a commuter train here in the Northeast and why passengers allegedly didn't try to stop it.
Ms. Holmes, please raise your right hand.
She was the darling of Silicon Valley.
Magazine cover after magazine cover.
But now, accused of massive fraud, she faces decades in prison if convicted and continues to maintain her innocence.
This is not fake it till you make it. This was a product that didn't work.
I'm Rebecca Jarvis, and for more than 5 years, my team and I have been following the case of Elizabeth Holmes, and we're here to guide you through every development of her trial, from the new evidence presented in court to how the jury might react to her new life. New episodes of The Dropout available Tuesdays wherever you listen to podcasts.
There is news tonight of a horrific sexual assault on a commuter train outside Philadelphia, with other riders allegedly failing to intervene. Authorities say the victim was attacked in Upper Darby Township. Police say several passengers recorded it on their phones but never called 911. The suspect was arrested after a transit employee finally called police. To the Index tonight, and Tony Bennett has made history with his new album.
Your fabulous face.
At 95, Bennett and Lady Gaga releasing Love for Sale. Tonight, he now holds the Guinness World Record as the oldest person to release an album of new music. Even more impressive as Bennett battles Alzheimer's. Of course, we are all pulling for him here. Finally tonight here, Colin Powell would often speak of the 13 rules to live by. So we went to find them in his own words. Colin Powell sharing this image just a few years back. A selfie he took in the 1950s. When he shared it, writing, "I was doing selfies 60 years before the rest of you." Over the years, Colin Powell would often speak of 13 rules to live by. In his memoir, It Worked for Me, he went down the list.
It ain't as bad as you think. It will look better in the morning. Get mad, then get over it. Avoid having your ego so close to your position that when your position falls, your ego goes with it. It can be done. Be careful what you choose. You may get it. Don't let adverse facts stand in the way of a good decision. You can't make someone else's choices. You shouldn't let someone else make yours. Check small things. Share credit. Remain calm. Be kind. Have a vision. Be demanding. Don't take counsel of your fears or naysayers. Perpetual optimism is a force multiplier.
Words to live by. We honor Colin Powell. Good night.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.